Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for attending the final presentation of the night. We're Team Ctrl+Z, and we're very excited to show you our capstone report on our project HAUS. I'm Nathan, and my teammates are Katie and Gustavo. Here's our table of contents. We'll first introduce the problem, then go into some of our methods for finding our target audience, then run you through our brainstorming and ideation processes to finally land on our first few prototypes that we used in our usability test. After going over our findings from our usability tests, we'll show you our final design. So oftentimes when people move in together, they set rules and guidelines for things like chores, payment due dates, guests coming over, etc. But after a few months, especially when the roommates don't really know each other or aren't really friends, people start to forget doing a few chores here and there, not cleaning up after themselves a few times, making late payments on rent, not communicating with the rest of the household, and so on and so forth. This often creates a lot of bottled up tension between the roommates and also reinforces poor communication behaviors at a potentially young age. We wanted to create a solution to this problem by creating a service that encourages communication on all fronts between roommates so that tension never has to build up and everyone can be comfortable in their living spaces. Introducing HAUS, an app designed to help optimize household duties by providing structure to the distribution of chores, improving communication amongst household members, a streamlined way of sending money for things like rent or other shared bills, and other helpful functions to help manage your household and the people in it in the best way. During the presentation, we'll be sharing our journey in making this app. Now I'll pass it over to Katie to brief you on some of our user research.
Thanks, Nathan. Our biggest findings of the literature review, after reviewing various sources like journal articles and census data, we found that there was an increase in non-family households, more time being spent inside, and roughly 1/3 of all food brought into house is wasted. We then evaluated the apps and household management tools in the market, and a good portion of them appeared to be outdated and only applicable to a specific task. Currently, users would have to download multiple apps to accomplish household management. To continue our user research, we began conducting interviews and hosted one focus group with couples. In total, we interviewed 14 distinct perspectives, ranging from students living with multiple roommates, families with young kids, and more. The largest percentage lived in an apartment and rented. Each perspective was able to shed light on how they dealt with household management and the challenges they faced. While conducting these interviews, we found 3 distinct subgroups that emerged and had similar challenges and needs. These were couples, roommates, and families. From the user research, we were able to create personas who would help represent these subgroups. We created affinity maps after the interviews for each of these distinctive groups. This is the first affinity map we did for our roommate interviews. An affinity map is where you take things that our users said in our interviews and classify these statements into categories that connect them. So for example, you can see that all the finance ones are placed together. We use these group findings to create user personas. Now this is an example of a persona that we made for a roommate. Jack Williams is 21 years old and lives with 2 roommates near his university. Midway through the semester, they stopped doing their chores consistently and it frustrated him. He began to just do it himself, but he realized that this is causing some tension between himself and his roommates. He feels stuck and he wishes there was better structure to his responsibilities, and he wasn't the only one nagging the group. Now I'm going to pass it over to Gustavo to talk about ideation.
Thanks, Katie. For ideation methods, we use affinity mapping. We did 3 rounds of filtering exercise in order to get the best ideas out. We focus on 6 major areas based on the user research. These being communication, food, billing, chores, and the general distributions of the app. Each of the team members rotate on each section, putting ideas for about 5 minutes. In that way, all the members can participate on each section individually. Later on, we group all the similar ideas into one node as a method of filtering. We developed a HARS sticky rating measurement system to rate all the ideas as we rate them individually. All the ideas that had 2 or more HARS will actually make it to a second round of a selection. After the HARS rating system, we took all the ideas, described them with more details, and all the ideas were lined up by section. And a second rating system, a sticker measurement system, was provided using a scale from 1 to 5. Each member read each idea and ran it with a sticker or point. With a maximum of 15 points per idea, all the ideas that have more than 12 points will actually make it to the final chart. These are the results for the ideation process, each idea with a corresponding rating for the general app, communication, and the duty distribution. And now the ideation results for the billing and the food waste section. This chart helps us to develop the ideation book, which we'll be showing on our next slide. We came up with a ton of ideas that we expand in detail in order to create a final idea book. These are some of the screenshots of some of the pages of it. Each idea features a detailed description of it in our previous star rating system on the top right corner. Now, I'll be showing you a prototype development from the information architecture to a wireframing to our first prototype. After user research, we found that we have three types of users that we should be working on. First, we have the couples, who usually leave 2 members per household and divide all the bills and chores in half. Second, we have the family, who usually have 2 or more members, and the relationship between them is siblings, parents, or older. And last but not least, we have the roommates. These usually live with 2 more members per house or dorm. Usually, they live with unfamiliar members for temporary periods, such as semesters. Based on our user research, we created a color scheme for our conceptual themes as shown here. On the right side, we have our first prototype sketches, which will influence the information architecture and the wireframe for our first prototype design. Before continuing with the prototype design, we developed the information architecture and the wireframe for each section. The information architecture is a structure of how the app connects with each other, and this helps to develop the wireframing, which is the first conceptual interface model of the app that explains how the app should look and work like. As shown in the slide, these are the information architecture and wireframing for the chat, chore, and the calendar section. We also developed information architecture and wireframing for the food and the billing section. These are key items for the foundation for the first prototype. For the core functionality of the app, we have 5 main categories, these being chores, chart, calendar, food, and finance, with a various subtasks in each category. We focus on adding features that will not only help the communication between the household members, but also personal tracking and organization. In terms of the user interface parameter of the app, these are a selection. For our font, we choose the DM Sans, and here's the typography scale. For a color palette, we start with a roommate. The color palette, as we like the warm, neutral feelings of the color books, but also we change the palette a little bit more to our liking. We look to incorporate different color schemes depending on the user type in our final iteration design. And finally, our logo on the bottom right. We really like this logo because how the left leg of the H doubles as a chimney in the home. Now, this is our first prototype that we use for our first usability test. The user can log in, put his household configuration. He can go to a chores and see the list of chores that are open. He can actually make a new chore if desired, go to his chores, see them with more details. And now we are going to the chat section when he's going to interact with another member, and he's going to have a smart action for chores, like a chore that he has been assigned, he can be added automatically. Now he's using the conflict facilitator to set up a time to talk with Tamara, and this appointment can be added automatically to his calendar. Going to the calendar section, he can filter school tasks, personal tasks, and just in general, he can also add guests coming over, personal event, or just reserve common areas. In the food section, we develop a grocery list where the user can have my list or just the group list of the house. He can add and he can edit as desired. We also develop a digital fridge, which is it copied the physical fridge of the house. And now we have the meal prep section, and the user can prepare the meal for the week. You can see the macros. And now in the billing section, the user can schedule payments. So he will never forget to make the rent paid. He can also scan the receipts, who eventually will be divided between the members. Now, these are storyboards where the users are going to be using the grocery list and the chat to communicate better with his members. As shown here, he framed to make the meal prep for the week. So he's going to the meal prep part of the app. He's going through the suggestions. and he's realizing he's missing details, so he will text and greet to his household member, which is actually at the supermarket. She will see the list and she will add it to the grocery list. Now, the meal prep for the week has been completed efficiently with less food waste. Now I'll hand it over to Nathan for the usability testing.
For our usability tests, we had our participants perform 2 to 3 tasks per section. 3 researchers were on each task, with 1 conductor, 1 think aloud note taker, and 1 person counting the clicks each participant made during each task. We had 2 rounds of user testing with roughly 5 participants in each group, and we asked our participants to do the think aloud method, where our participants audibly explain their thoughts as they navigate the app while going through the tasks. We also had follow-up questions regarding the experience after each task. For our data collection methods, we relied on click counting, think aloud note taking, and reviewed the videos of each interview for further insights. Our measurement metrics were success scores based on the number of ideal clicks per task and comparisons between the 2 groups. All usability tests were done through Zoom, with our prototype being housed in Figma. Users 1 to 5 did the first set of user testing, and the average age was 37, with the most common house type being house with family as their relation. Group 2 was users 6 through 11 and had a similar distribution, with the average age being 34 with the house and family. Overall, the age of participants varied, with the median being in the 25 to 30 age range, with 2 participants even in their late 60s. For our first usability test, I have our tasks listed here as shown to our participants. Our prototype was very much an MVP, or a minimum viable product, in that we only had 1 or 2 core functions that worked in each section. We focused on those fleshed out sections with our tasks for this first usability test, and mostly focused on getting feedback from participants for things like navigation or criticism on other functionality. For our findings, when we went back to analyze our results, we saw that some of the tasks had too much guidance and were too straightforward. We also consistently saw that people did not know what a digital fridge was with the way that it looked, nor did they understand the concept until it was fully explained, as shown on the left. For swiping to filter for school tasks, we concluded that participants did not have the natural instinct to swipe on our prototype, as they needed to click and drag the mouse sideways to emulate a swipe. This is a rather unnatural movement for people using a mouse to navigate a web page, making it difficult for users to instantly know to swipe to filter between tasks. The users also had some trouble sticking to the think aloud method while going through the tasks. For the second round of usability testing, we kept all the tasks from the first test, but improved all the areas of concern for each task within the app. We also built out additional functionality in the food and finance section, so we incorporated a few tasks to test out some of those pages. Our key changes for this usability test were in 2 main areas: the user testing procedure and the app interface. For the procedure, we incorporated a warm-up math equation to better demonstrate the think aloud method for our users, which was very successful in helping users stick to the method in the second round of testing. We also reminded our users to think about the prototype like a phone and not a website for the filtering task, and also changed the focus of our task in that instead of telling our users to go and do something, we asked them more to find what the app already says to give us a better understanding of the user journey while navigating our app. For the app interface, we changed the digital fridge to be more consistent with the mental model of a refrigerator and made aesthetic changes to buttons. Katie and I are going to show you some of those changes as a result of our findings in the coming slides. So between the 2 usability tests, the biggest changes we made for the chat interface was changing the buttons to be different from the text messages, as well as adding an icon indicating that an action is going to happen, and also adding a notification for users to know where to start each task. Here are the findings for our chat task. On the right, the charts visually show how many times users clicked while trying to complete the task in solid yellow. The dotted black line is the ideal number of clicks to complete the task. With task 2, there was a glitch discovered during user testing until we resolved it after user 3. User 4 and onward had no further issues with the task, highlighting the success of the functionality. For task 1, there was confusion with the auto response of the chats during user testing, as you kind of saw in the video. We changed the color scheme of the buttons after user 5, which definitely helped, but the auto response function in the chat was still confusing for many users. Below the findings on each slide, we have included quotes from some of the users after experiencing the prototype.
For our food section, you can see how we updated a digital fridge to make it more look like a refrigerator than the version on the left. And we also included words like frozen food and frozen proteins, which really helped users realize the purpose of it. We also added an additional swipe affordance at the top of the meal planning section to indicate that you could swipe between the days. The food subsection had 4 tasks. For task 1, there was confusion regarding what a digital fridge, and as mentioned, we did evaluate and fix this solution. We found that the new design was an older style fridge design, which did confuse younger user testing. For task 2, the main issue was the unfamiliarity of the app itself. Within the app, there is an individual grocery list and a group grocery list so that users could buy items for their roommates and be reimbursed for their purchases. When users re-engaged with this function, there were no issues with adding items, but further tutorials and remapping is going to be advised. For tasks 3 and 4, these were added after our first group of testing, and these 2 sections had minimal issues with the task, but a recommendation to remap some of the subsections is advisable based on the think aloud comments during user testing. There's also no changes done in between users. Between the usability tests, the only change that we made in the finance section was clearing up the miscommunication about the meaning of my balance, making it clearly money owed in red and negative. We designed the new features of split and budget, with split being a purchase tracking function that keeps track of total money owed between each household member after various transactions, and the budget section offering things like a current balance in the checking and savings account, monthly money spent, history, and goals. The first task within finance had the smoothest transition for tasks and no confusion. The only misclicking was due to an extra functionality that the app provided. For task 2, the split payment also had minimal confusion and was mainly due to not knowing the facial profile of the roommates in the simulation. The finance section had the least amount of mistakes, and users cited the ease of navigating this portion of the app. This trend continued with task 3, but not for task 4. For task 3, there were no issues at all, and there was only one outlier of misclicking. For task 4, there was a difference in mental mapping and the user design. The layout for send and request was different than how the users navigated the other portions. There was also confusion with the difference between the split and send and request. The chores section was another section we did not need to do too many changes based on the usability tests, but logically we thought to change the order of the buttons to verify that a task has been done. A photo needs to sometimes be submitted. Because of this, we thought that the photo button should come before the checkbox. We also made the plus button to add a chore more visible by making it larger, and also have a green stroke around it to help stand out from the background, because this was an issue during our first round of testing. Finally, we added the leaderboard functionality for some friendly competition between household members. Within chores, the task 2 was a great example of a minor modification within the app that resolved numerous moments of confusion and misclicks. By simply changing that plus sign within the app to be darker, users resolved some confusion and reduced the overall clicks received for the task. For task 1, we modified it slightly, but there are still some issues with this section which will need to be reinvestigated. Between the 2 usability tests, we changed the word from filter to swipe and added 2 arrows to make it clearer so that the page could move. We also reminded users that they were using a prototype for a phone, not a computer, and to remind to emulate actions that you could do for a phone, for example, for that swiping task. We also made an add event button larger by removing the search button, which had no real use in the calendar, but this was changed after both usability testing rounds were complete. On the calendar section, we had 2 tasks. The first task required the user to swipe with the mouse, just like if they were swiping with the finger on their phone. As mentioned previously, this interaction had a lot of conflict with the participant because they could not figure out what to do. For the second task, there was confusion with the guests coming over and personal events. However, after the user determined the difference between those 2, there were no repeated issues. Now I'm going to hand it off to Nathan to talk about the final design.
So here we have the final design of the chats section, and we can see the conversation that's being prompted with the user and Christine. And it says to pick up the kids at 3 p.m. So the user is offered the option to add that to their chores right away in the conversation. Then they see a conflict has been detected by the conflict facilitator with Tamara. So they're once again prompted to add this appointment to their calendar, which they can do so very easily on this page. This is the video of the food section, and we have someone accessing their digital fridge and increasing the inventory of cheese slices. And then we have someone going into the recipe section to look at beef stew, where they can either see the full recipe, which you can see here, or they can add the missing ingredients from their digital fridge to their grocery list, which will take you right to the grocery list. And you can see the various things that people have contributed already, as well as things that you can contribute yourself, like a cheesecake. Here's the finance section, and we have someone scheduling a payment for April 28th. Very straightforward, just filling in the blanks. Next, we have send in request, where someone inputs the name being Tamara this time, and also adding Christine to this payment. It seems like the user is requesting $29.75 for their portion of the electricity bill this month. For splitting payments, you can see the user should be getting $15.57 from Christine, but after this movie transaction, we can see that the user actually owes Christine $6.25. And here is the chores section. We have the unassigned chores list where someone can easily add a chore to one of the unassigned chores to their list, also access their chores and add any chores to the unassigned chores list, as well as assigning it to someone should they wish. And this is the leaderboard functionality, which tracks some of the things that happened in the last week and this week. This is the calendar section where you can see the user swiping to filter tasks on the bottom and also adding a personal event or a guest coming over up top. It's very straightforward, fill in the blank. You can see a new event is there for the 28th. Finally, for our conclusions, for our successes, we were happy to see that each iteration led to significant improvements for the experience of our users, and we achieved our primary goal of encouraging consistent communication between household members on all fronts. The biggest lesson we learned after all the testing is that the useful app functions are going to vary drastically as a result of the relationship of the people living together. For our limitations, we did not know many fresh roommates we could ask for a usability test, and the ones we did ask from our user interviews either were unavailable or no longer lived in that situation. Additionally, our prototype was mainly accessed through a computer and navigated with a mouse, creating some additional errors that users on a phone might not make. Users were also thrust straight into the app and did not get any training or instruction on how to navigate the prototype. For future steps, we'd like to do further testing with our ideal target audience being new roommates, but also test the app with roommates varying in amount of years lived together to compare the differences. Finally, we'd like to develop a few additional interface alternatives for other potential user types like we mentioned earlier when we were picking from the different color palettes. Thank you so much for listening to our presentation, and are there any questions?